Welcome to the live stream at First Unitarian Wilmington podcast. Here we will share some sermons, talks, interviews, or conversations we call life journeys, and also occasionally music. I'm Reverend Larry Piers, minister at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. If you enjoy what we are offering, please share it with a friend. Our purpose is to spark conversations and to share what we value as a Unitarian Universalist congregation with a wider community. To find out more about us, please visit our website, firstuuwilm.org. And now, welcome to this episode of Livestream at First Unitarian.
The Unitarian Universalist Flower Communion service, which we celebrated at the first part of this service, was originated in 1923 by the Reverend Dr. Norbert Čapek, the founder of the modern Unitarian movement in Czechoslovakia, which today is the Czech Republic. On the last Sunday before the summer recess, the Unitarian Church in Prague, all the children and adults participated in this colorful ritual, which expresses the beauty that is created when each of us brings our whole self to this faith community. It celebrates as well the beauty and the grace of the transformation that is possible if we truly engage with one another in all of our particularities and all of our differences. We are prompts to one another's growth. Keep that in mind. If someone kind of approaches you or rubs you the wrong way, just say to yourself, you're a prompt to my growth. You're a prompt to my growth. For over 100 years, this ritual has been celebrated in Unitarian and Universalist, Unitarian Universalist congregations in this country and around the world. The ritual is a symbolic representation of a dynamic hope that is present within our particular approach to the religious. It is a dynamic hope that we might each find our particular authentic spiritual path, even when there may be several twists and turns along the way. It is a dynamic hope that we will each be open to the implicit wholeness and splendid mystery of life that does not artificially separate the rational and the intuitive, that does not separate the mundane events and the shimmering beauty that surrounds us. It is a dynamic hope that allows us to appreciate the complexity implicit in nature as we come to celebrate the diversity of the world and the world's people as a source of wonder, strength, and imagination. As I've reflected on the life and work of Reverend Norbert Čapek once more this year, it seems to me that these same qualities are what Čapek embodied. First, following his own spiritual path to where it leads, appreciating the wholeness and the mystery of life, celebrating and safeguarding the absolute necessity of diversity against the forces that would suppress, feel threatened by, or want to diminish that diversity. His life is a testimony that can ring true to us on this day in these times. First, Norbert Čapek followed his own circuitous path to wherever it would lead him spiritually. Čapek was brought up as a Roman Catholic in Bohemia, now the Czech Republic. Then, while living in Vienna with his uncle as an apprentice to a tailor, he started attending a Baptist church, which appealed to his lure toward the personal spiritual experience and the absolute essentials of Christianity. By age 25, he completed his theological study in Hamburg and became a Baptist minister. As one biographer puts it, at first a Bible salesman and a missionary preacher, he became a very successful evangelist in Central Europe. Eventually, he was head of all the Baptist churches in what came to be known as Czechoslovakia. But in his magazine articles, his theology was becoming too liberal for his colleagues. Drum roll here. And so he went into a voluntary exile in the United States. Čapek was introduced to Unitarianism by the first president of the Czechoslovak, let's say the Czech Republic, whose wife, Charlotte, was an American Unitarian from Brooklyn, New York. He and his family then went to join a Unitarian church in Orange, New Jersey, and Čapek received training for the Unitarian ministry supported by the American Unitarians and the British Unitarians. By 1921, he returned to Prague, where he established the Liberal Religious Fellowship. It grew to be one of the largest Unitarian churches in the world with over 3,200 members. First, they rented a concert hall. And then, over time, they attained their own building, which I actually had the opportunity to visit in 2017 while leading a training for ministers, seminarians, and lay people for the Unitarian Academy, which is sort of a seminary without walls for the Religious Society of Czech Unitarians. Perhaps you can identify with some of the impulse towards the spiritual that was present in Čapek's life and led him within and through and beyond the faith of his upbringing, in and through and beyond the dominant faith of his culture, and into a longing to find what was true, what was authentic, and ennobling of his own particular soul. Sometimes for those of us who did not grow up as Unitarian Universalists, we often have a tendency to focus on what it is that we left behind. I propose that we honor whatever it is that propels us forward, that propelled us forward. Even if we left something behind, I propose that we recognize what it is that lured us forward and what we are moving toward, not just what we are moving from. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So, for Čapek, it seems that the lure towards, as he expressed it, where the divine and the human meet. And so I ask you to pause now and consider whatever your own religious journey, whatever twist and turn. How many of you been through some twists and turns? Whatever twists and turns you have taken or may still be taking, what is it that has propelled you forward? What might you say it is that continues to lure you forward in your spiritual life? Let's take a moment and reflect upon that. And we might even be able to hear a few responses to that question that could begin with the statement, "For me it is." So what is it that has propelled you forward through the twists and the turns of your own spiritual life? For me, I'm modeling how you might say it. For me, it is that quest for more and more authenticity in my life. What is it for you? Okay. Hold on for a second. The growing understanding of reciprocity and what that means in the planet. Okay, for me it's greater empathy. For me it's greater tranquility.
Women's rights.
For me it's women's rights.
For me it's social justice.
For me it's social justice.
For me it's hope.
For me it's hope.
For me, it's a connection to the rhythms and cycles of the planet.
For me, it's connection with the rhythms and the cycles of the planet. Maybe one or two more.
For me, it's alternatives to anger.
For me, it is alternatives to anger.
For me, it's access to the museums, libraries, and arts.
For me, it's access to the museums, the libraries, and the arts. And I'm repeating just so those joining us online might appreciate the wisdom that you are sharing. Second, Norbert Čapek also appreciated the wholeness of life. What the physicist David Bohm called the implicate order. With Čapek, we might have the occasion of recognizing that those artificial divisions we create between head and heart, between the rational and the intuitive, between the known and the unknown, can dissolve when we come into the presence of a direct experience of wholeness that encompasses them all. We might recognize it when we are transformed by glimmers of beauty that invite us into transcendence. Many people were drawn by the message of the Unitarian congregation that Čapek founded in Prague. Those who were raised in more traditional religions, or none at all, were drawn towards an approach to religions that focused on a this-world approach to living out religious values. They were drawn to an approach of dispensing of beliefs and theologies that didn't resonate with their own sense of what was true. They were drawn towards a religion that affirmed the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. And they were drawn by freedom. The congregation drew people who were raised Roman Catholic, who were Jews because of the monotheistic and non-Trinitarian approach, or who, like Čapek, had once been some form of evangelical Christian and were looking for something different. In their rush to disembark from limiting beliefs that they may have found refuge in and an overly intellectual and rational approach, they clung to one sliver of what is possible. Čapek recognized that music carries and holds us in ways that are profound, wondrous, and more than rational. Čapek wrote more than 90 hymns. We sang 2 of them today so far. We have heard those hymns, Mother, Father, Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, and In the Depths of My Soul. Although it is often hard to express our experiences of music and of lyrics that resonate within our own individual and collective hearts, we can simply receive them as gifts, as grace. Especially on this Sunday, where we recognize and appreciate Kathy Harris and her ministry of music among us. I acknowledge that I have had a direct experience of this implicit power of music on many Sundays. Over the course of these last 4 years, Kathy, I've had the wonderful experience of planning worship services with you, of suggesting hymns, and of together entering what I can only call an intuitive place where we could receive what emerges and sometimes just stand back for the alchemy to occur. Do you know what I mean? What you might experience as lines on an order of service, as hymns or preludes, instrumental or offertory music, I have experienced with Kathy's guidance in the choir's dedication and skill. Often I've experienced it as a synergetic and magical experience that translates our words on a planning sheet into something we could never have planned, but just receive it. I treasure the work, the mastery, and the skill of Kathy's musical leadership. And I understand more and more that music invites us into this liminal dimension, this sometimes wordless dimension, where sometimes, even in spite of ourselves, we might enter into inner experiences and emotions, even for those who resist being carried, held, cared for by the awesome mystery of music, by the liminal, by the wordless, by the emotional. we are lured there in any case in spite of ourselves, right? Čapek noticed that in simplifying his worship services to the bare basics, the worship services began to feel like something that could occur in a lecture hall. And so he recognized that he and his congregation needed more music and needed ritual. So living in that question, he had the experience of revelation and transcendence one day that led to his creating the flower ceremony. One day in the 1920s, on a walk through a field of flowers, Čapek, as a young Unitarian minister in Prague, was filled with an unexpected experience of awe and wonder. He was transported by that field of beauty. This inspired him, along with his wife, to create the flower ceremony. John O'Donohue, in his book Beauty, the Invisible Embrace, offers this insight. I quote, "Much of the stress and emptiness that haunts us can be traced back to our lack of attention to beauty. Internally, the mind becomes coarse and dull if it remains unvisited by images and thought which hold the radiance of beauty." You don't have to be an artist to appreciate that. We each have had those moments where beauty has lifted us in ways that we could never have imagined. So we can ask ourselves as well, in what ways do you allow, or could you allow, yourself to be nurtured by beauty? What might you say in response to that question? And let's just pause. We won't have a chance to hear from folks, but what it is that you want to allow in terms of beauty in your life. What is it that you do currently? What do you want to do to allow more beauty? Even if we don't hear your responses, how many of you have thought of something? Tuck it into your heart and remember that this week. And third, just briefly, Čapek also recognized that celebrating diversity and upholding human freedom was a religious task that had social implications, sometimes dangerous social implications. The Unitarian Church of Prague thrived in a time when people longed for religious and personal freedom of belief and to celebrate their diverse perspectives and experiences. They could not take their freedom for granted, particularly when what they were doing and saying came to be seen as a threat to those rising forces that sought to suppress diversity and repress freedom. So when the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia in 1938, the Nazis saw the Unitarian Church of Prague as a real threat to their authoritarian and fascist state. Spies came to listen to Čapek's sermons to report to the Nazi leaders. Do we have any spies here this morning? Jews were welcomed into the membership of the Unitarian Congregation of Prague and embraced in a way that threatened the forces of cruelty and hate that were rising through this fascist takeover. The congregation was also helping Jews escape the Nazi terror, and we've heard some of that story through our focus on the origins of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Čapek was arrested for subversion to the state. As one account says, it was judged that Čapek's gospel of inherent worth and dignity of every human person made him, as the Nazi records revealed, too dangerous to the Reich to be allowed to live. Čapek was sent to Dachau, where he was killed by a lethal injection on October 20th, 1942. He threatened the Nazi regime because his congregation embodied and embraced a diversity at its best expression of nature's magnificence and the human being's magnificence as demonstrated in the flower ceremony. Čapek drew on a source of strength where the divine and the human meet, and did not want to succumb to those forces present even in our time that want to limit or control the infinite that expresses itself in so many diverse and beautiful ways around us in nature and among us as human communities. Upon the news of his death, Frederick May Elliott, the president of the American Unitarian Association, declared, "Another name is added to the list of heroic Unitarian martyrs by whose death our freedom has been bought. Ours is now the responsibility to see to it that we stand fast in the liberty so gloriously won." In a prayer that Čapek offered, it ended with this phrase: "It is worthwhile to live and fight courageously for sacred ideals." It is worthwhile to live and fight courageously for sacred ideals. May we feel an inspiration and a courage from the testimony of his life. So may it be. Amen.